these people.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
Good evening. I'm Robert McBride of All Classical Portland, your favorite radio station. At least some of you I know like the station. Of course, thank you for saying that. And this is Pascal Tortelier, our guest conductor for tonight's concert.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Who I had the you'll probably need to hold that a little bit closer.
Yes.
Who I had the pleasure of meeting about a minute ago backstage. So we get to know each other at the same time that they get to know you. And
that's very nice.
And I'm very honored to have a chance to talk with you.
Oh.
So this concert took place last night in Salem. All I know about that is that Yolanda Condenasis, our guest star, played an encore after her concerto. I hope she'll do the same tonight. Other than that, how was it?
Well, it's the whole experience is most enjoyable. I had been thinking about Portland for a long time. Oregon was somewhere in my mind for many years. I think I first appeared as a conductor in this country, not far from here actually, in Seattle. I hadn't thought about it, but it is true that only 3 hours drive from here, I made my debut as a conductor back in '85. And when I say as a conductor, it's because I already had if not a career, certainly quite some activity as an instrumentalist.
As a prize-winning violinist.
Well, if you say so. Yes, and so really that has been a big thing in my life. I mean, it has been a big dilemma, to really decide, between the instrument and being a conductor. It has been difficult because I was a full-time violinist. My father had really trained me and done everything that was possibly necessary for me to become an instrumentalist, and a good enough instrumentalist, as it happens. But there was something in me which told me that I probably had to venture into conducting for a number of reasons. Maybe this is not the time to talk about it now, but now that I am approaching 70, I am beginning to feel like I made the right decision. It's about time, isn't it?
I was thinking that too. Well, your father was a very successful conductor, so did he just not want the competition?
Well, maybe that. Well, he kept saying to me, during his later years, he used to say, "Oh, I am becoming jealous of you." But I think he was just being nice to me. He wanted to encourage me, and I think he was quite excited to see that I was becoming a conductor, properly speaking. When I got my appointment with the BBC Philharmonic back in the late 80s, that's just before he died, I think he was quite impressed. And because, as you just described him, he was also conducting, but maybe not, I would say, full-time, certainly not, and maybe not totally professionally, because he was such a magnificent cellist. You cannot have it all. He was such an exceptional cellist that he was also a composer. He wrote a lot for the cello, and he was a famous teacher. There are some interesting DVDs which have come out lately about his years, as an artist and as a personality. That's the thing. Since we talk about my father, and I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't, but he was a very, very, very strong personality. If you want to have an idea of what kind of an artist and what kind of a person he was, you can find these two DVDs. Mostly they come from America. It's a company called VAI, and they concentrate on you know, historical performances and great artists of the past. That's mainly to do with great artists that have passed away. And my father is among them. So have a look. You will get the Bach suites, like rarely played, in homage to Pablo Casals, which was his mentor. And more lately, because he would have been 100 last year, there was a DVD about just, you know, the personality and the person he was, so like a portrait plus 4 concertos. So if you like your cello, you have nothing to lose in getting those DVDs. Anyway.
Who owns that cello now?
It is in the family, and it is amazing that you would touch on that, because my dear mother, who was nearly as good a cellist as my father, and this is on YouTube, so I am really making a lot of publicity for the Tortelier family this evening, you know. Just look at YouTube and you search on Tortelier and you will find all sort of rather interesting documents. You would see my mother play with him, and she just passed away. She just passed away at 88, and she was a marvelous teacher, the best cello teacher you could ever imagine. And so we have had the cellos in the family, you know, more than one cello, since both my father and mother were cellists, and, you know, she held me there for 9 months. I was, you know, getting these musical vibrations. Maybe it was fate, you see.
What a fantastic way for a musically gifted child to grow up. You were very fortunate. I just want to say about your mother, may she visit you often in your dreams, and your father too.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Very, very kind of you. But I have always been convinced that this situation, which, when I say situation, I mean, you know, the one of spending 9 months in close contact with the cello. This is a situation I share with a famous American conductor whose name is Leonard Slatkin. His mother was a wonderful cellist. In those days, she was in Los Angeles, just as his father was. He was a violinist, the father of Leonard Slatkin, and they were some of the best instrumentalists, and, you know, doing all these, film music and studio music in the heydays of Hollywood. He told me himself that he was the son of a cellist mother. So you don't find many of those. There is him and I.
Well, you're reminding me of something. Many years ago, I was interviewing a cellist who was in a string quartet, and his quartet was rehearsing a piece of music that they had never played. It was totally new to him, and he kept thinking, there's something about this that is so deeply familiar. I can't put my finger on it. His mom was a cellist, and he happened to mention it to her one day, and she said, when I was pregnant with you, our quartet was working on that piece.
Oh.
So well, there's 3.
There
add
is
him
3.
To your family. Yeah.
So what's his name?
I can't remember. Isn't that terrible? I remember the story, but I can't remember who he was.
This is a very lovely story. This.
Yeah. Try to track that down.
Yeah.
My memory's not what it used to be, as I recall. Yeah. So. You're working tonight with one of the world's great harpists, Yolanda Condenasis, who I got to meet a couple of days ago. Very, very nice person, wonderful artist. Have you worked with her before?
No, this is the first time.
Have you worked with this orchestra before?
This is the first time.
Wow. And I'm glad we're here tonight. You know, there are 3 harps involved with this concert. That's a record for me.
You're right, absolutely.
Because there are 2 in the Ravel and then the solo in the Ginastera.
Absolutely, you got it. So it all makes for a very exciting evening, which we will spend together. And, you know, I started saying, you know, I was thinking about Portland and Oregon. I mean, that always appealed to me. The word Oregon in itself is very attractive for me. And I can tell you that I am neither disappointed with the place, neither with the orchestra. I must tell you, I don't have to tell you, but you are very, very lucky to have such a wonderful orchestra. And they are in pretty good shape. So I spend my life traveling all over, and I arrive here in Oregon, and I have the most wonderful surprise to find a superb orchestra to do some Ravel, to do some Ginastera, and to do Tchaikovsky.
Yay! And it really is going to be a spectacular concert. There's much to love about Maurice Ravel's music. The Spanish-inspired music by Ravel is particularly colorful and passionate, and this piece is an example of that. And it's also got a little bit of humor in it.
Yeah.
Funny solos often go to the principal bassoonist. So
Yes.
we've got one
Yes,
of this too.
it's supposedly...
This piece has a really difficult to translate title.
I
You
know.
are a Frenchman. How would you translate it?
Well, it's precisely, Alborada is not particularly French as such. A number of French composers have, would you say, excelled? Do you
Yes.
say? Yes, they
At
have
writing Spanish
excelled
music,
at Spanish music, yes. Well, probably we all know that, but I think it was Manuel de Falla who said it. So coming from Manuel de Falla, the great Spanish composer, it's rather impressive, but it is true that you get Lalo, Symphony Espagnole, of course the most famous item is Carmen, by Bizet, and many others, including Chabrier, España, you probably know of Chabrier, España, and Ravel, Debussy with Iberia. So it's quite amazing. Now, when it comes to Ravel, there is maybe a good reason, or half a good reason for that. It's that because, he was half Basque. So you know what I'm talking about, Basque country, which one of these entities that wants to be independent from Spain. But anyway, it still belongs half to Spain, half to France, because the Basque country is across the border these days. But that's where Ravel was born. And the father, I think, was close to Swiss. Anyway, there is something of a clockmaker in Ravel.
Stravinsky described Ravel as a Swiss clockmaker of a composer, which sounds like a real insult. I don't know for sure if he meant it that way.
But when I say it, it is not an insult, because he was one of these composers who was such a perfectionist that he produced really a small number of works. But if you think of most of them, which is not many, they are all absolute masterpieces. And they are not only masterpieces, they are one of. They are, the Bolero, because this is not a small piece, although he described it as a piece without, a symphonic piece without music, but that was a bit of little irony coming from him. I tell you,
Will you come back and do Bolero with us sometime?
Anytime.
Okay.
For me, this is, the Bolero is a challenge. It really is a challenge, just like La Valse is another one. Daphnis and Chloe is one of the greatest ballet music ever. It has suffered from the proximity of the Rite of Spring, we all know that. But then there is Tzigan for violin. Tzigan is the most demanding piece for the violin, which I played all my life until I stopped the violin. But you will find it on YouTube.
You?
You will find Tzigan with me playing and my sister, Tzigan, on YouTube. And the first two pages of Tzigan, the first page, is all on the G string, which is the most difficult and challenging string to play, and it goes to the very high G, which is a nightmare for the instrumentalist. So another challenge, and I am sure I forget some. Well, the left-hand concerto. How about that? Isn't that an absolute masterpiece, which is also a one-off challenging piece? So there is really something special about Ravel. But what touches me most in Ravel's music actually is not the challenges, it's the genuineness of his music and the touchiness which I find amazing when it comes to the smaller pieces like Ma Mère Loire, Mother Goose, which some of you may already know, or Le Tombeau de Couperin, and some intimate pieces which he wrote for children. He was a man who lived totally secluded and quite, if not remote, he was a bachelor. And he considered, I think, that his job as a creator, as an artist, and having to create music was so demanding that he couldn't impose that on a spouse. I think that's the idea. And Brahms was another one who lived on his own. He would go to Hamburg and just, relax himself with the occasional girl, which you find in the street. But Ravel did just the same. And they never married, those two. Very interesting. But anyway, when Ravel writes music for children, it's to die for. It's just, it brings tears in my eyes. I have a very, 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 I dare not say personal because I don't have the right to say that, but I feel like I am connected to Ravel in some way, and I don't know how to explain that to you. But tonight, this is not the Ravel I am alluding to right now. Tonight, it is the flamboyant Ravel, who is a virtuoso orchestrator.
It's Alborada del Gracioso.
Yes, that's how we started, yes.
Morning song of the jester or clown. In Spanish theater, the gracioso is sort of a stock character who mocks, often very sarcastically, his superiors.
That's right.
And is that what's in this music? Do you hear that?
Well, you hear it in the faster sections, although it's almost too brilliant to bring laughter. It is so successfully written that you are just amazed with the effect which he brings, a lot of pizzicati. So that sounds like you get 50 strings playing in pizzicato. So it's like having 50 guitars in a way. And you have a lot, these are the features which we are talking about, pizzicati, you know what I mean by that? It's when you pluck the strings on the instrument. As I say, all the strings are using pizzicati a lot, very rhythmical, extremely, and I want it rhythmical, but then there is lots of repeated notes, which originally on the piano, you play by switching fingers on one single note, and the pianists are horrified when they have to play these things. They really, how do you say, switch fingers? Yeah.
And do weird glissandi things in thirds and fourths.
Yeah,
how do you do that?
Some unusual things on the piano. He had to translate it for the orchestra. The glissandi, they go to the harp, as you may have anticipated. That's the best thing to do on the harp, is glissandi. But the repeated notes, very fast, are given either to the flute, which can do double tongue, so they don't do with their fingers, they do it with their tongue instead of fingers, or the trumpet, or the horns. Those only instrument can reproduce fast notes repeated. So that's not only spectacular, maybe you can find it also entertaining, if not funny. But then you get the serenade itself, because this is the serenade by the jester. So it's a clumsy kind of serenade.
Think of him as a Leporello kind of character.
Yes, that's a good way to describe it. And the serenade is given to the bassoon. The buffoon. The bassoon.
Funny how similar those two words are, isn't it?
So there you are. It is an extremely entertaining start of the program, and this is followed by this other Latin kind of music of Ginastera, which is really a serious and very demanding and beautiful piece.
Beautiful. From the 1950s. Next year will be the 100th anniversary of Ginastera's birth, so we'll probably be hearing more of his music, I hope.
I see.
The first and third movements are very rhythmic, lots of percussion action, so it fits in beautifully with Ravel. And the middle movement is this linky, chromatic, like Bartok night music
Completely,
thing.
yes,
And
yes,
I love
yes.
it.
And it's very dreamy, a bit mysterious, and it's this kind of suspended, you know. You don't know where it comes from and where it goes, but there are some beautiful modern, but not so difficult for that. Just, you know, modern and mysterious kind of dissonance and harmonies. And then comes a cadenza, which you would never expect the harp to be able to produce, because, you know, we think of the harp as a lush and soft and you know, how would you say, smooth kind of enveloping kind of sound, and actually she creates some extraordinary chords, patterns, arpeggios, and even some sounds you have never heard before. Glissandi with the nails. So it's glissandis which sound a bit woody, like, you know, it's a bit not scratchy but almost, and also a glissandi which is I never saw that before. It's vertical, so she puts her hand at the bottom near what we call the table of the harp, at the bottom of the string, and she just moves it fast upwards, and you hear. Well, actually, I did it very well.
You've passed the audition.
Thank you.
Then there's halftime, at which time Yolanda Cardenas will be signing CDs at the table in the lobby. After intermission, Tchaikovsky 5. What do you want to say about that grand, triumphant symphony? Maybe among the least neurotic of the Tchaikovsky symphonies. The most classical, maybe.
Right. I like the word classical. I think Tchaikovsky loved Mozart above all, just like Ravel. I think Ravel spent a long time studying Mozart concertos before he wrote his own piano concerto.
Yeah, you hear that in the slow movement of the G major concerto. Yeah. You know, an interesting thing about Ravel, if I may interject this, because I think you'd find it interesting. You talked about Ravel living alone and being a very private man. He never let anybody see him working or see any of his sketches. Nobody ever went in his home and saw anything in progress. He always put everything away.
I think that's part of the perfectionist temperament. So both Ravel and Tchaikovsky were, you know, the greatest admirers of Mozart, and it has left some stamp on their output. But because when you talk of the neurotic side of Tchaikovsky, in the framework of his music, there is a great deal of classicism and rigor in the way his works are composed, the schema, the scheme, the schema we say in French, the
schematic design.
Yeah, the design, the structure, and this is a side of Tchaikovsky which appeals to me, because in the end you get a blend between romanticism, if you want to call it neurotic, you know, the romantic and emotional, definitely, you know, a very, very strong emotional side in the music of Tchaikovsky. At the same time, it is contained in a framework which, as I was just explaining, is classical. So it is really completely different from say, Mahler. Although, of course, there is a great deal of form in Mahler. With Mahler, it goes at times sort of overboard. It goes, you know, much farther than Tchaikovsky does, but of course it is not quite the same generation of composer. And with Tchaikovsky, it remains in this framework, which in a way gives it
More power?
More power. I didn't dare say it, but you said it for me. Because
They pay me to do that too. I'll have you know.
And maybe it also has to do with the way I have been brought up with my father, who was a classicist, and maybe I was also a pupil of Nadia Boulanger. People like that in my education, in my bringing up, maybe have had a great deal of influence, and they have given me this, I dare not say rigorous, but you know, classical in a way. Approach, and maybe that has to do also with the French temperament. If you take, maybe I shouldn't say that before my performance, but I'll be really honest with you. If you take a Russian artist, I am sure he will deal with this symphony in a much more romantic and outgoing, extrovert way than I do. At the same time, as I say, there is a great deal of emotion in the music, so the emotion is there anyway. And the way I feel about it is, it's very difficult to describe, but well, you will make your mind, and that's it, you know. Sorry.
Aren't you glad you're here? You know, I'm half tempted to cancel the concert and just talk with you for a couple more hours. But we'll do this again tomorrow afternoon and then Monday night, so you'll just have to come back because we know he's going to have a million more fascinating things to say. This has been such a pleasure, sir. Thank you. Pascal Tortelier, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you for your understanding. Thank you for your understanding. Merci. Merci.